today that, recording in progress. I noticed today that we've hit a new record temperature in Europe of 48.8 degrees in Sicily today, which is absolutely terrifying. Also this week, it probably won't have escaped your attention that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has released their latest report, which, to be honest, is terrifying and has confirmed what we already know about global warming. A 1% rise is pretty much inevitable at this stage, with a 2% not far behind. That was their exact words. And more frighteningly, there is news of accompanying sea level rise that will be quite catastrophic across the world. To tell us more, I'm going to hand you over to Pat, but I'm also going to say a big thank you to Flo Jarvis for co-hosting and also for her technical wizardry. So Pat is a secondary school teacher here in Wandsworth, and she's lived and worked in Wandsworth for many years and is going to be presenting. So over to you, Pat.
Thank you. Thanks, Lou. Okay, good evening. Thank you very much for coming. So I'm going to give, can everybody see me? Am I there? Yeah. Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. I'm going to give a presentation about the climate and ecological emergency, which I think we all feel panicked about, but feel powerless to stop. Hopefully in an hour's time, you might feel empowered to join with Extinction Rebellion to act in a meaningful way against the destruction of our planet. So we're going to talk about XR more in detail later, but just to briefly introduce ourselves, we are a non-violent direct action protest organisation. So this is where I go into my slides and we see if it works. Great. We aim to elicit governmental action on the climate and the ecological crises that are happening. We are everyday citizens looking for a solution to the crisis we're in. As you heard, I'm a local teacher and other friends from my group are in this meeting, and we're from all backgrounds, all walks of life. We just share a common interest. We have realised that individual action isn't enough to tackle what is happening. The only thing we can do is to get our governments, both at home and internationally, to take decisive action on our behalf. They must protect us as they pledged to do when they came to power. Because the problem is so huge and so overarching, and at the heart of it is power and injustice. Well, self-interest and money, to be specific, to be honest, pitted against those who don't have enough voice or power to complain, which is why Extinction Rebellion wants to give ordinary people a voice to rebel against this. Because a terrible global injustice is happening, because those that are the most at risk from global warming are usually those that have caused it least. Okay. At the heart of it all is massive injustice, and XR are committed to trying to put this right and to tackle it on many fronts. We've just had a terrible pandemic. We're still in it. And it's taught us that our civilization is more fragile than we like to think. It's shown us how vulnerable, how big, strong technological society really is. And it gives us a timely clue what the much bigger and nasty monster of climate crisis is. We're not living in harmony with nature. We are living at war with nature, which is crazy because we're part of nature. we are causing climate destruction and ecological destruction on the land, in the air, and in the rivers and the seas. This threatens the survival of living creatures and plants as well as ourselves. And this is what was made very clear in the IPCC report that came out on Monday. This is a slide from that report that was in the press pack, and I've just kind of put this in because I think it just shows at a glance what our choices are. It just shows the globe, you know, it's pretty clear, and how temperature rise, there's a little key along the bottom, how temperature rise will affect us if we go at 1 degree centigrade, I'm going to above pre-industrial levels of warming. I'm going to talk about that in a moment on the top left. Then 1.5 degrees global warming, which we're trying to stay below, but it's looking increasingly unlikely. Bottom left, it's at 2 degrees, and bottom right is at 4 degrees centigrade, which if we carry on as we are, we will be reaching towards the end of the century. It also shows that the warming is not equal across the whole world. And when we talk about 1.1 or 1.2 or 2 degrees centigrade, we're talking about an average. And we're talking about some areas being far, far more heavily affected than others. And that's why it's such a shock when in temperate climates, we suddenly get heat domes and heat situations that we're really not expecting. That's not what we expect. Okay, so this came out on Monday. The interesting thing is that all the shock horror in the media, you know, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change have been talking about this for many years. This is, I just copied and pasted a little bit from the foreword of the 2013 report. Just have a look down, look at the bits in bold, and you will see that in 2013, they were saying the same thing as they are saying now. They are saying that it's caused by human activity, that the warming in the climate system is unequivocal, that the observed changes are unprecedented. And right at the bottom, you will see the report demanding the urgent attention of both policymakers and the general public. Then again, in 2018, the IPCC did another special report, which got a lot of publicity at the time, which demanded that global warming was limited to under 1.5 degrees and saying that it would require drastic action. Humanity has a limited window in which it can hope to avoid the worst effects of climate change, according to the climate report. And it was after this 2018 report that XR was formed the year after, because despite these reports coming out and scientists speaking as loudly as they could, it's very, very difficult to act effectively and in time. So I'm just going to show you what we call the hockey stick graph. Let me just see if I can get it to come here. This is the last 2,000 years. Okay, so 2,000 years, up to 2000. And this is the CO2 levels in the atmosphere. And it's parts per million. So this is 280 something, and it's been pretty kind of stable. And then you will see that about 1850 or so, suddenly the CO2 levels in the atmosphere started to rise. This is the red line. The blue squiggly lines are year-on-year temperatures. And if you plot out the average temperatures, you will see that year on year, they rise in parallel with the rise in CO2. What happened in 1850? The Industrial Revolution. This was when we discovered the wonderful power of coal and then gas and then oil to power our civilization, and we moved into an industrial age. This CO2 goes up into the atmosphere, and it's pretty permanent up there. It doesn't dissolve, it stays there. And please remember that the Earth's atmosphere is only 60 miles high. So when we talk about polluting something, we're talking about something that's very fine and very fragile. I am an English teacher, and I do like a simile. And the image that I have in my mind is that it's like wrapping a duvet around the Earth. So I'm going to just show you another chart, which puts it into an even longer context. This is actually 5 million years. And I'm showing you it because sometimes people say, well, the Earth has had several warm periods in the past, several cold periods. What's the big deal? And of course, it's true. There have been warm periods in the Earth's past. But these warm periods have not happened during our current human civilization. So here we have 5 million years worth of temperature rise, of temperature change on the surface of the Earth, which of course can be read in the geology and the ice and so on. You will see that for the past 10,000 years, I'm trying to get my mouse to it, it's been very stable. Oh, apart from this little spike here, which is now, but it's been very stable for the past 10,000 years. This is the Holocene era. This is the age where humankind has flourished. We've kind of discovered agriculture. We became farmers. We formed communities. We spread out across the surface of the Earth, towns, cities. It was all good and very, very stable. But if you look back from here, we're here approaching, you know, sort of, as we know, 1.5 or so. All the way back here, we haven't had a spike like that above 2 degrees for 130,000 years. We go even further back to 4 degrees, which, as we know, is a possibility. We'll see that we're kind of getting on for 5 million years. So we are taking some pretty big risks here in terms of what we're doing to our climate. So now I'm going to show you some images of the effects at 1.1 degrees. So still not a huge amount of warming. You know, we've still got plenty that we can go much higher than this. Top left, obviously, an image representing drought. Droughts are getting longer, they're getting worse. And by 2025, the World Health Organization predict that 4 billion people will be suffering severe water shortages. 2025, 4 billion, half the world's population will be in areas where there isn't enough water. And of course, that doesn't just mean not enough to drink, it also means food production is severely compromised as well. Then top right, we've got an image that is obviously showing that too much water is also a problem. When we introduce more heat, which is a form of energy into a system, it becomes more energetic. We get bigger, more devastating hurricanes, and these are definitely linked to climate change. This is an image not of the recent floods that have been featured in the media, but it's the one that I originally had in the talk, and I decided not to change it. It's from Karachi in September 2020. Bottom left, I again left my image of the Australian fire. Obviously, it's Australia. Obviously, we also know that Siberia is on fire, Greece is on fire, California, I think, is back alight. The Australian fires, however, the damage can be assessed because they finished in 2020. They burned for nearly 9 months. They covered an area the size of France. They destroyed an area the size of France. And it is estimated that 1 billion animals, birds, and reptiles were burnt to death. These hot, long, hot, dry seasons are causing the fires far, far more frequently, and they're far, far worse. And it's interesting, we were so shocked when temperatures were in the upper 40s in America and Canada, and because they're temperate climates. But in hotter countries across the world, in Africa and Asia, they've been reaching 50 degrees for several years now. And at that kind of temperature, we can't survive. We just can't live. If you go outside for too long, dehydration takes place too quickly. And of course, that's the same for livestock, and it's the same for crops. Bottom right, I have obviously something representing sea level rise. The IPCC says sea level rise is now inevitable and it's unprecedented. In my original script, I had what did I have? Worst case scenario is a 2-meter rise by 2100, but they are saying that that is inevitable in Monday's report. David King, who is the former UK government chief advisor on climate change, told Mark Carney in a recent interview that by 2050, countries such as Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Indonesia, and cities such as Mumbai and Calcutta will be underwater so frequently that they will be unable to sustain a population. So those countries by 2050 will be drowning. So the world is at 1.1 degree. We are possibly heading to 3 to 4 degrees above pre-industrial levels. So what does that mean? It means that many, many people will be living in areas of the world that are uninhabitable. So according to the United Nations, climate chaos is on track to produce mass displacement of somewhere between 200 million and 1 billion people by 2050. This is by far the greatest ever movement of people in the history of humankind. And that is in the next 3 decades. Of course, it's starting already. If global temperatures reach 3 degrees, as possibly forecast, one of the possible scenarios, about 1/3 of the world's population will be living in extreme heat. And that's not all. There's also a crisis in the biosphere, which is the ecology, the web of living beings that sustains us. Humans depend on a healthy natural environment for our well-being and survival. And we are destroying nature. In 2019, there was another international report, backed again by the United Nations, which said that 1 million species are at risk of extinction. It also said that nature is declining globally at rates unprecedented in human history, and that this rate of species extinction is accelerating, and around 1/4 of species are already threatened with extinction. We're changing the face of the earth. Humans affect 3/4 of land, 2/3 of the oceans, 3/4 of fresh water, and they don't leave much room for anything else. And the chair of the organisation that produced this particular report said, "We are eroding the very foundations of our economies, our livelihoods, our food security, health, and quality of life worldwide." I think I'm just going to come back to you. Basically, we are trashing our planet. We are destroying habitats and trees. We're killing insects with pesticides which disrupt the food webs of nature. We are creating vast agricultural monocultures where nothing can live. We are polluting the air and the waters. We are warming the seas. We're messing up the fragile ecosystems within land, within the forests, within the rivers, within the oceans. I've said it before, we're at war with nature. We just can't keep on going like this. When you put it all together, we have begun Earth's 6th mass extinction. If we look at the history of life on Earth, there have been several major events that have destroyed a large percentage of living things. Probably 5, and we seem to be on course for causing the 6th one of these. And almost all of them seem to have been due to changes in climate of one sort or another. We're producing these large changes in the distribution of life on Earth. Is it mass extinction, or some people call it mass extermination? I just want to look at this slide with you. I mean, I've mentioned 1 million species threatened with extinction. When you look at the species at risk of extinction, I mean, this is not 40% of amphibians, this is 40% of species of amphibians. Obviously, corals, we know, are being very threatened by the warming of the oceans. Mammals, 25% are threatened with extinction. It's quite a dramatic picture. And you know, the UK is apparently one of the most nature depleted countries in Europe. 1 in 5 mammals in the UK is threatened with extinction. And all of this has happened in the last 50 years, approximately. That's my lifetime plus a bit. Those of us who are adults today came into a world still rich with biodiversity and natural landscapes. And what will we be handing on to future generations, to our grandchildren and our children? We will be handing on a degraded and infertile planet. Not only that, but we're destroying the very things that keep us alive. It's not just the richness and quality of our lives, but it's the very existence of our lives that is under threat. So, what must change? If we do nothing else, we need to stop CO2 emissions from fossil fuel burning. Everything else is secondary, because if we don't do that, then we will fail. It's that straightforward. I'm going to come off this slide for a moment. To have any chance of keeping below 2 degrees, we need to stop emitting CO2 rapidly, entirely, and forever. Because time has run out. Personal action on its own will fail. It is critical that our new approach encourages governments, international organisations and corporations to change. New oil, gas and coal fields are still being explored. They're being developed, they're being licensed as we speak across the world. And we can't afford it. We can't afford it. We have to be investing and looking for more renewable energy. We can't be looking for a bit of renewable energy and also investing in fossil fuels, which we can't afford to use. What my next slide is. Oh yes, what have we tried so far? We've had global agreements, country level legislation, legal challenges, traditional campaigning, and many, many personal commitments to reducing emissions, and none of it has worked. See on the left-hand side of the slide, our hockey stick, so clear. And on the right-hand side, you can see that it's 1990 since the first IPCC started its scientific investigations and putting out its reports. We've had these big protocols, these reports, these agreements, which we've all heard of, and yet the hockey stick curve continues up, up, up. We hoped that possibly we would reset after the pandemic, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So when the rules don't work for us, we must break the rules. We won't be the first ones to do so. In fact, breaking the rules in the name of a good cause has a long and noble tradition, and it's been successful many times in the past. All of these are examples of non-violent direct action. Obviously, Gandhi with Indian independence. This is Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her place on a bus to a white person and triggered the American Civil Rights Movement. And of course, on the right, we have a still from the American Civil Rights Movement. These people and the millions who surrounded them and supported them are regarded as heroes now, but at the time they were mocked and they were often vilified as criminals for breaking the law. You may have noticed that throughout history, elites with power and money tend not to give away rights without being pressured to do so. So non-violent direct action basically means normally law-abiding citizens breaking rules and laws as a way to force change in a system that will not change. And this is why actions are Extinction Rebellion's main tactic. Now, a little bit about, so Extinction Rebellion does rely quite heavily on people who are willing to be arrested. Because this, if you're going to carry out disruptive actions and create dilemmas for the authorities, we need people who are willing to do things that risk arrest. It's a form of disruption in itself, and it enables our voice to be heard. However, for every person who is what we call an arrestable, somebody who is willing to be arrested to make this point, there are always at least 20 other people who are part of the movement, who support them and help the movement in other ways. So we've got artists, trainers, cooks, singers, samba bands, organisers, climbers, because we like to put up banners, the list goes on. Joining Extinction Rebellion does not mean that you have to get arrested. You don't. I don't want to be arrested. There are so many ways you can help, and we use people's strengths. So if you're artistic, it's very useful and wonderful to get involved in the arts movement because all our flags and banners are made in-house. If you're a writer or a designer, we have leaflets and posters. I'm a teacher, so I can speak. So I try to use my strengths to help the movement. Civil disobedience is a mass movement with lots and lots of different arms. But we do need numbers. We want to have 1 million people actively involved. And most of all, we need people out on the streets. We need people out showing their feelings. We need people out there protesting. And we have a big summer rebellion coming up on the 23rd of August, where we're going to need people to speak out. I'm just going to show you a slide now of our 3 demands, because they're very clear and straightforward. Our first demand is so simple: tell the truth. Well, maybe this week on Monday with the IPCC report, we moved a little bit closer to that. We demand that the information that I covered in this talk is common knowledge to people. Everybody should know about this in the same way that people were told about the threat from Nazi Germany. The problem we have is that the huge fossil fuel companies like Chevron, Shell, BP, and Exxon have greenwashed for 40 years. They've created deliberate confusion. They've lobbied and they've lied since the 1980s, while carrying on their destructive practices, knowing full well what damage they are doing. If you add to this financial investment in unethical companies, you end up with a brick wall made up of powerful global corporations and financial institutions and media companies with vested interests. The truth is not always being told. A second demand is act now. We're demanding net zero gas emissions and biodiversity loss by 2025. Obviously, that's pretty ambitious. It basically means now, not kicking it some point in the future. So many of the targets are by 2050 and 2060. That's too late. Tipping points will be well past by then, and the damage will be irreversible. Our third demand is to move beyond politics and have citizens' assemblies, or a powerful citizens' assembly of ordinary people to decide how to address these issues. We do have a citizens' assembly, but they're very advisory and nothing is legally binding about what they recommend. They would be commissioned and funded by the government, but they would be independently organised and run. XR wouldn't be involved in the setup. They wouldn't run the assembly. They wouldn't be involved. We just think that it would strengthen our democracy. So, you don't need permission to get involved in XR. There's no joining up procedure. There's not even any real leaders. It's a self-organizing movement. You can visit the website for all sorts of information on our demands. That's rebellion.earth. So much is there. You will find it all there. You can also sign up for the UK newsletter there. And the QR code is just in the corner if you just want to take a photo of that. Most people also join up in their local area. If you're in Wandsworth and you'd like to be put on our mailing list, please put your name, email address and phone number in the chat and we'll get you immediately put onto the list. Otherwise, if you go to the rebellion.earth, you will find that there's an area where you can find out local groups, just a map with kind of pinheads in that you click on. But I have been told to say this, that a personal commitment isn't enough. XR is not going to do the job for you while you watch and support. We need people, lots of people. We are struggling to wake people up, and we are a group that depends on mass action. We all have to fight for this. We have to fight hard, and we have to fight now. We have a moral obligation to ourselves, our children and their children, to people in the rest of the world who are suffering, and to all the other species we share the planet with, and to our beautiful, fragile planet itself. This is what's happening on the 23rd of August, and that is going to go on for at least a fortnight. And you can find out about it on our website. And I think that brings me to the end of my bit, and I'm going to stop the share. And I'm going to hand back to Lou. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you very much, Pat. It doesn't matter how many times I hear this talk, I'm always floored by it every single time. It seems inconceivable to me that we're in this position and there aren't thousands of people on the street every single day. I recognize there's been a lot to take in those slides in a short period of time. It's probably raised a lot of questions, possibly more than it's actually answered questions. We will send a follow-up email that has lots of links to more reports and information for you. And you're obviously always welcome to email us at XR Wandsworth with any questions that come to you later. We're here to answer them. I've been looking through the chat, and our colleague Glyn has put lots of really good links in there of stuff from the IPCC report, and they are really worth reading. But go easy on yourself, because a lot of this information is very hard to digest. There's a reason we're called Extinction Rebellion. We are heading for very troublesome times. I haven't actually seen any questions come up. Joanne Glynn was worried about the arresting side of things, and she said she'd stick to armchair activism, and I said we need every activist we can, and if you want to do that from your armchair, we have a great digital rebellion that happens at the same time as our rebellions, so you can get involved in that, and that's quite good fun, and it's sort of amplifying the voices of those of us on the streets by regularly tweeting, emailing, mentioning on Instagram all sorts of people. We've also had a lovely comment from Catherine Polidano, who's in Malta, and she's a member of Extinction Rebellion out there. And she's suggesting that we all simultaneously work together in our countries, which is a great idea, and I've signposted her to our International Solidarity Network group so that she can get in touch with them, and we can, again, it's about amplification of these messages. But that's all the questions and comments we have in the chat. Is there anyone on screen here who'd like to ask anything? John Lever.
I'd like to make a suggestion, if I may. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yep.
There is a website called Write to Them. Write, W-R-I-T-E, T-O, them, all one word. Write to Them. And if you go on that website and you put in your postcode, it will give you your councillors and your MP and enable you to contact them from the website. Okay.
That's
So,
great.
yeah. So, I mean, obviously, we should be contacting councillors and MPs and so on. We should also, I suggest, you know, talking about Wandsworth, why, you know, what is Wandsworth Council doing about all their vehicles, their dust carts, you know, the other vehicles that they use? Are they going to electrify them? And if not, why not? You know?
Absolutely. That's a very important point.
I mean, you know, one gets, you get frustrated because you feel, what can one person do? But there is stuff, you know, there is stuff that you can do. You can make a noise. You can
You're
badger
absolutely
your
right.
local website. You badger your local council. You know.
You have, everyone here has a voice, and we must use it wherever we see fit. You know, we spend quite a lot of time putting together these talks and doing outreach on the streets, because we honestly believe the more people that hear the science, the more people that will get involved, and it's that simple. We have a campaign in Wandsworth that we are using to target our council, and we have 4 demands of them. They still invest their pension funds and investment portfolios in fossil fuels, believe it or not, when on Monday morning, all of those shares tanked because of the IPCC report. That is a whole load of council workers' pensions that have lost value there. We're asking them to stop cutting down trees, because they seem to have a habit of just chopping them down when they feel like it. We're asking them to do a food waste collection trial, because at the moment all of our waste is incinerated, which obviously pumps out CO2, and yet our food waste could be the most amazing, fabulous compost, and actually that sequesters carbon back into the soil, and heaven knows we need that. And our final demand is to reduce air pollution to World Health Organization level limits, which, well, if you live in Wandsworth, you'll know that the pollution is absolutely shocking and regularly exceeds those levels in Clapham Junction, Putney High Street, and around the town hall. And we only know about those ones because there are monitors there. We suspect it's bad in a lot more places. Nine Elms, for example, is probably shocking. So yes, if you're worried about taking to the streets of London, but you want to do something on a more local level, please get involved in those campaigns, because yeah, we think we're having an effect. Sorry, Robert, your hand is up.
I think I've just unmuted myself, and I'm not called Robert. I'm Gwen, his partner. I just wanted to say thanks, Pat. That was really informative and interesting. I'm not from the Clapham area, but it's motivated me to look into joining my local group. I just had a comment. You quite rightly said that we have to stop using fossil fuels now. And from my experience, I'm very interested at action from a consumer level. And from my experience, I know that around me, many people are put off by the sort of activist aspect of Extinction Rebellion. It scares them. They don't want to create too much disruption, but they are very interested in acting at their level quietly without making too much noise. And in relation to the fossil fuel consumption, I think it would be very, very interesting to educate people and help them make their own decision for their household on how to move away from fossil fuel. I would probably estimate that 90% of Brits just don't know what to do. They've never asked themselves a question. There is no campaign that I'm aware of that tells people that it's just as cheap to move to renewables. All you have to do is contact your supplier and make it happen. But is this something Extinction Rebellion is looking into in terms of campaigning?
Want to take that, Pat?
Sorry, does Glyn want to answer that, or sorry, maybe he's not there.
So I'll start. Oh,
Lou, do you want me to jump in?
Jump in, Glenn.
Okay, well, I mean, there's one of these things which I'll put in the chat now, which is quite interesting, and it's really about the very idea of your own personal contributions, because it's one of those things that BP cunningly came up with, and it's a way of passing the blame onto the consumer. So we're all busy thinking about, well, how can I cut here? How can I cut there? And BP have really said, well, that's what you've got to do. It's nothing to do with us. So it's almost a sort of, it's a really cynical way of passing the blame on. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong, and we all have to do it to cut our own carbon emissions. But, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many plastic bags you recycle, unless the carbon is actually stopped, the fossil fuel is stopped, then it's sort of slightly irrelevant. Sad to say. So it's actually that bit of the equation that I think we're concentrating on. There are definitely all sorts of apps which can tell you your own personal carbon footprint. So that's one way of doing it. But I think, well, certainly from where I am, it's actually fossil fuel. Without dealing with that, then we don't deal with the problem. They're putting out 40 billion tons of carbon into the atmosphere every year. Which means, it's that we've got 10 years. We've got a carbon budget of, I think it's over 400 now in the new one. But we've basically got 10 years before we burn through all that. So that's really the scale of the problem. Sorry.
Glyn, my point, I think, is I really believe in the power of consumers. And I think where consumers individually, just like BP is telling them to, are taking responsibility and switching themselves. If there's tens of thousands of us doing this, then we become very, very powerful in changing the way the industry works and the governments work. And I think for some people, the quieter message works better and is equally, well, not equally as effective, but it's another way of reaching people.
Can I just add something to that, Glenn? Glenn, absolutely with you that people have to be educated. And I suppose that's part of being told the truth, isn't it? One of the demands is to be told the truth. And some of our actions have been against the media, who don't really tell the truth and haven't really made it clear to people how important these things are. But I think that the thing is, Extinction Rebellion can't be everything. It can't be everything to everybody. So it is spearheading a protest that is aimed at those in power and aimed at getting them to legislate these kind of things. So for instance, with home heating and gas boilers and so on, I mean, for an ordinary person to put in a heat pump or whatever it is £14,000. So there needs to be some kind of governmental kind of support for that, or legislation for it. It's personal actions are really important, but I think Extinction Rebellion is a protest group aimed at those in power. And all these things have to work in tandem, don't they? Because it's such a big problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Pat. Thanks, Glyn, as well.
Sorry, Marie, is your hand up?
Hi.
It's Chris.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Chris. Maury is next to me here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Personally, I find Zoom sessions really hard work because I'm really a more belly-to-belly person, and whilst I agree with some of the things I said, I do totally agree with you that we don't have time now to start being nice and thinking and getting educated. We know what the problem is. We know, as Glenn said, the problem is not our end. This is just, it's big business, and it is governments trying to blame us, just in the same way that politicians who've created horrendous problems in the past, like Mr. Hitler, blamed other people for the horrors that he produced. And that's what's going on now. So I'm all for, let's get going to do stuff, but it does Wandsworth have a group of people who meet up, or is it just a Zoom session? Because otherwise I'll just go straight to, I'm going on the 23rd anyway, but I just feel that people need courage, and you get courage from other people. And I'm afraid Zoom doesn't give you courage. Zoom gives you information, and it's nice to see faces, but we need to be together. And maybe there's a Wandsworth group that goes marching along with all the other groups together, so that we get courage from each other, rather than just being isolated and then having to turn up and not knowing who we're talking to and who we're with. I
completely agree with you. And I don't think I could have walked this path with my knowledge of the science and the climate emergency without the people from Wandsworth by my side. There have been times when I've been furious. There have been times when I've been so upset by it. And to know that there are other people who are experiencing the same emotions as you is such a comfort. We are planning, we're not having in-person meetings yet, but we're getting closer to it. In fact, Zoom's been quite good to be able to get as many people together as possible. So we do have Zoom meetings at the moment, but we are hoping to have a day over the rebellion where we as Wandsworth meet up and go to a march together. So if you give us your, do you have email addresses or a phone number? We can add you to our list.
Well, we are registered on your local group. You're on the local groups, aren't you?
Yes,
you put a website,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we've already registered on the main website.
Brilliant.
I couldn't find anything about Wandsworth in there, so we'll register for that. But I just can't help feeling, this is about bodies on streets, and we can't do it by all sitting around virtually and then turning up on the day, because people don't.
No.
I promise you, less than 50% of the people will turn up if they just do Zoom, because we're all afraid. Everybody's afraid, and getting arrested is, honestly, when you have and it now once, it's not a problem. It's just people, the fear of being arrested is far worse than being arrested, because the point about being arrested is it's a nuisance. The government doesn't want people to be arrested because it takes time and effort. The police don't want to arrest you. So actually, it's a very good tactic to irritate people. And if you irritate people, they'll start to take notice. At the moment, as you said earlier, or as Pat said earlier on, people see Extinction Rebellion as a load of pile of nutters, who sit in trees. Well, that's not going to last much longer, because in 10 years' time, there'll be no trees to sit in.
Oh, goodness, that's a terrible thought. Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. If you can, I think.
So, so as soon as you have, I'd love to join physically something as soon as possible, because I just think that will strengthen the group.
Absolutely. You haven't found the Wandsworth group yet, but have we got your email address?
I've got mine, I think.
Do you want to type it into the chat?
Yeah. I think we've got my wife's, and you've got us. We will get in touch with the group. If we haven't got it, we'll do it directly.
All right, brilliant.
We definitely do meet and do local actions. That's what we've been doing recently, and it is very empowering. I agree.
John,
I just joined the Wandsworth group on Facebook. Yeah, I got a reply from somebody called Izzy Romilly, who said, if there was any way that one wanted to be involved with the activities, she would get back to me, but she hasn't. I have a friend who's involved with XR helping out on legal advice, and he told me that there might be a role called rebel ringers. My mobility is limited, but I'm anxious to do what I can, you know, caning the phones or whatever. So how do I get that done?
Bless you, that's very kind. We have your email address as a result of you being here. That's what I've been told. So we will make sure that we get in touch with you and take up that offer, because we need everyone. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions? I see Peter has asked, how do we get involved? And I'm going to tell you, the 23rd of August, Trafalgar Square, 10 a.m. That's when we start. So the first week of our rebellion is going to be about crisis talks, because we recognize that until we sit down with people like we have here this evening and actually talk about where we are from the science point of view, people don't get it. And then people get angry or people have questions. And if we're sitting at a table with them, you know, we can sit and listen to their fears, listen to their anger, and tell them what the truth is, and try to make connections, because ultimately we're not safe until we're all safe. We all have to work together on this. So we all, every cross section of society, every political party, we all have to come together to make these changes and to demand these changes. And so a lot of that involves actually sitting down and talking to everyone. So that's the theme of our first week of rebellion. So there will be tables popping up all over the city and the West End. And the second week is going to be more disruptive, but is going to have a focus of the financing of the fossil fuel industry, because it's shocking how much money is still going into these this section, this sector. So yes, we start 23rd of August, Trafalgar Square, 10 a.m. There'll be a gathering, and if you've ever seen any of our marches or our actions, they're lively, they're great fun, there's great music, there's great speakers. So if you can, please join us on the streets. And yes, I see that Kate's questions about a young baby, you know, we're very family friendly. You know, there's often lots of kids. And in fact, I think there is an action somewhere over the next 2 weeks, which is a children's play-in. So instead of a sit-in or a die-in, which we do sometimes when we all fall to the ground, there's going to be a play-in. So give us your information and we'll make sure you know the details of that. Are there any more questions?
Can I just ask you, Lou, is there a group? There is a families group, isn't there?
Yeah.
Is that XR families or?
Joe, are you here? Because we have a very active Parents for Futures group here in Wandsworth.
Joe Taylor isn't here.
I can see his name, but perhaps he's, So if we can certainly.
Sorry, I'm
oh,
here,
there he is. There he is. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah.
Tell us about.
Yes, so there is an XR Families group. I don't know much about them, but I think you'll find them on Facebook. I'm sure they'll be around during Rebellion. And also here in Wandsworth, a lot of people are part of Parents for Future Southwest London, who you can find on Twitter or Facebook, or I post my email in the chat if you want to email me about it. And it's a sort of Parents for Future's kind of a affiliate group of XR for parents who wanted to discuss these things at the school gates without scaring people with XR. Be great to get you involved. I'll post my email in the chat now.
Thank you, Joe. I think that's certainly all the questions on the chat. There's a gentleman called Dennis who's joined us from Belgium, and he's found it very interesting. And he's hoping to do something similar in Brussels soon. So that's great news. Are there any more questions?
I mean, just can I just say one thing, that the actions vary, you know, from being, I mean, disobedience is one which just filled the streets with people doing disco dancing, and there's stuff for children, and then there's also marches. So the disruption often takes many different forms, and so you have quite a lot of choice. And there's also the digital rebellion, where lots of stuff is done online for people who aren't mobile or don't want to leave the house. There was also a question, I think, earlier from Jan about the kind of the makeup of XR. I can't see where it is now. Maybe that was.
Here we are. Yes. What is the age and social profile of XR here and internationally? I don't actually have that kind of information at my fingertips. Glyn, do you know?
I don't have that sort of information, no, but XR is spread over 60 countries. So I think that probably, it covers a wide demographic overall, I think. One thing I would like to add, Lou, if it's okay, would just be something to have a look at the COP26 climate action plan. So this is one of the things. It's not actually XR, although there are people in XR who are also doing that, but it's one of these things. It's just outside XR, but XR are going to be aligning to it. So it's going to be part of the financial rebellion, I think. It's a very well written piece, he says, and it's it's very persuasive, and it's one of these things we've had quite a lot of politicians getting on board. We've even had the governor of the Bank of England has been talking about it. So I think it's going to be quite an important one. So I'll pop that in the chat. I think I already have, but I'll do it again. Thank you.
Thank you, Glyn. Glyn's been working very hard on that action plan, and it's a great piece of work, and he's having some wonderful success with it as well in terms of getting people on side.
Okay.
Any more for any more? No, I don't think so. Bless you, John. Just to say thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate this subject matter isn't the easiest thing to hear about. It's not anyone's idea of a good time, but it is critically important. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Pat for giving up her time and for speaking so eloquently this evening as well. And to say, hopefully, we'll see you all really soon in person or on the streets. If you want to access the links that Glyn has put in the chat, there are 3 small buttons at the bottom, 3 small dots at the bottom right-hand corner of the chat. If you click on those, it says save chat, and that will then save a document to your computer that you can then go in and click on the links that Glyn has put in and read them at your own time. Steve. You're muted.
I'm just, there we go. I just noticed in the chat, somebody was asking where this, if the recording of this will be accessible, because they would like to use it persuade some of their friends to get over some of their feelings about XR. Will it be available?
I believe it will, but I can see our technical wizard Flo has come on screen.
Here
Tell
she
us,
is.
Flo.
Yeah, so XR Wandsworth has a YouTube channel. So tonight I'll be uploading it to there, and then because we have your email address because you registered for this via Eventbrite, I'll send it as the final email you'll get from us via Eventbrite. I'll send the link so that you can find it. But hopefully it shouldn't take the usual 2 hours to upload to YouTube, and you should have it in your inbox tonight.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Flo. Thanks, Steve. So thank you all for your time this evening. Hopefully meet you again in person or on the streets. The time is now. We must rebel. Have a lovely evening, everyone.
Okay.